Maya locked herself in the last stall of the girls' bathroom, her breathing ragged as she tried to calm herself. The dress, a vintage piece that had belonged to her mother, was beyond saving. Cherry red splotches had already set into the delicate white fabric, creating a map of her humiliation. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications as videos of the incident circulated through social media. Each ping felt like another needle stabbing into her heart. For 3 years at Westlake High, Maya had perfected the art of invisibility. Keep your head down. Don't make eye contact. Take the long route between classes to avoid certain hallways. She'd become an expert at navigating the social minefield that high school represented, all to avoid Vanessa Winters and her inner circle of tormentors. It had started freshman year when Maya corrected Vanessa's answer in biology class. Such a small thing, but in Vanessa's world, it was an unforgivable offense. "You've got 2 options," Maya whispered to her reflection, her voice echoing against the bathroom tiles. "You can go home defeated, or you can do something different." The school nurse, Mrs. Patterson, had always been kind to Maya. On multiple occasions, Maya had sought refuge in the nurse's office, claiming headaches or stomach pains when the real ailment was a bruised spirit. Today would be no different except for what came after. "Oh, honey," Mrs. Patterson said when Maya appeared at her door, the ruined dress now stiffening as it dried. The nurse didn't ask questions. She already knew. The social dynamics of Westlake weren't a secret to the staff, though most chose to look the other way. "Let me see what I can do." From the supply closet, Mrs. Patterson produced a stack of safety pins, a stapler, scissors, and, unexpectedly, a small sewing kit. "My grandmother always said a good nurse is prepared for anything," she explained with a wink. "Now, what are we thinking? Cover it up or make it a feature?" For the next 40 minutes, as 3rd and 4th periods passed, Maya and Mrs. Patterson worked on the dress. They cut away the worst-stained portions, refashioning the sundress into something asymmetrical and deliberate. Safety pins became both functional and decorative elements. The nurse even produced a small bottle of fabric dye from her mysterious supply closet for emergency lab coat stains, she explained, which they used to accentuate certain areas, transforming the random stains into something that looked intentional. "One last touch," Mrs. Patterson said, removing her own denim jacket and draping it over Maya's shoulders. "Consider it alone. It brings out the warrior in you." Maya stared at her reflection in the small mirror of the nurse's office. The girl looking back at her wasn't the same one who had fled the cafeteria in tears. This girl looked interesting, artistic, deliberate. The stained dress no longer represented her humiliation. It represented her refusal to be defined by someone else's cruelty. "Thank you," Maya whispered, her voice stronger than it had been in years. "Don't thank me yet," Mrs. Patterson replied. "The hard part comes next. You have to walk back out there." The hallway was empty when Maya emerged from the nurse's office, but the bell would ring in 3 minutes, flooding the corridors with students. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she considered her options. The back exit was 30 steps to her right. She could be in her car and gone before anyone saw her. Or she could turn left, toward her 5th period English class, and face whatever awaited her there. Maya turned left. The bell rang just as she reached the classroom door. Students poured into the hallway, and the inevitable happened almost immediately. Conversations halted. Heads turned. Phones appeared, ready to document round 2 of Maya's humiliation. She felt her resolve wavering under their collective gaze. Then she remembered Mrs. Patterson's words. "Stand straight. Look them in the eye. Own your space." Maya straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and walked purposefully into her English class. Mrs. Abernathy, the teacher, paused mid-sentence as Maya entered, clearly expecting her to have gone home. A beat of silence followed, heavy with anticipation. "Nice jacket," Zoe Kim said from the back row, breaking the tension. It wasn't much, but it was something, an acknowledgement that didn't contain pity or mockery. Maya slid into her seat, aware of the whispers around her, but choosing not to hear them. When Tyler Robertson leaned over to say, "Shouldn't you be hiding somewhere and crying?" Maya simply replied, "Why? It's just juice." And honestly, I think the dress looks better now. By sixth period, something strange had begun to happen. The stares continued, but they had changed in quality. There was curiosity there and something else, a grudging respect perhaps. When Maya entered the cafeteria for lunch, returning to the scene of the crime as it were, she didn't slink to a corner table. Instead, she walked confidently to the center of the room, claimed an empty table, and began eating her lunch as if nothing unusual had happened. One by one, people joined her, first Zoe from English class, then Marcus from her math study group, then others who had never spoken to her before. By the time Vanessa and her friends entered the cafeteria, Maya was surrounded by a dozen students, laughing and talking as if they'd been friends for years. The look on Vanessa's face, confusion giving way to anger, then settling into something like uncertainty, was worth every moment of discomfort Maya had endured that day. As the final bell rang, Maya found a note slipped into her locker. She expected another taunt, but instead found a simple message. What you did today was brave. You're not alone. It wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. Maya realized that her personal transformation might be just the beginning. That evening, as Maya hung the modified dress in her closet, she took a photo and posted it to her Instagram with a simple caption. Sometimes life gives you stains. Make them part of your design. She hesitated before pressing share, knowing she was inviting more attention, potentially more ridicule. But something had shifted inside her that day. Fear no longer held the reins. By morning, her post had hundreds of likes and dozens of comments, many from classmates she barely knew. "This is why art matters," wrote the president of the school's fashion club. "Resilience personified," commented her history teacher. Most surprising was a message from Lily Chun, a quiet sophomore whom Maya knew only by sight. "You've given me courage to face my own bullies. Thank you." Maya's mother noticed the change immediately. "Something's different about you," she said over breakfast, studying her daughter's face. "You look lighter somehow." "I decided to stop carrying other people's opinions," Maya replied, surprising herself with the clarity of the insight. "They're too heavy, and they're not mine to bear." When Maya arrived at school the next day, she found 5 other students wearing clothes with deliberate stains or artistic modifications. By the end of the week, that number had grown to 15. What had begun as one girl's response to humiliation was transforming into a statement, a reclamation of power. The most profound change, however, wasn't in how others saw Maya, but in how she saw herself. The girl who had spent years trying to disappear now walked the halls with purpose. She spoke up in class without second-guessing herself. She made eye contact. She claimed space. The transformation wasn't just in a stained dress made beautiful again. It was in the understanding that her worth had never depended on Vanessa's approval or anyone else's. When Vanessa cornered her in the hallway a week later, flanked by her usual supporters, Maya didn't flinch. "You think you're so special now?" Vanessa hissed, clearly unnerved by her inability to predict Maya's reactions anymore. Maya considered the question seriously. "No," she finally replied. "I think I'm exactly who I've always been. I just stopped apologizing for it." She walked away before Vanessa could respond, feeling the weight of the other girl's stare between her shoulder blades but no longer burdened by it. That afternoon, the guidance counselor, Mr. Reyes, called Maya into his office. "I've had 5 students come to me this week to report bullying incidents," he told her. "That's more than I usually hear about in a semester. They all mentioned you by name as their inspiration." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "Would you be interested in helping me start something more formal? A student committee focused on changing the culture here." Maya thought about the safety pins holding her dress together, how something broken could be remade into something stronger, more interesting, more authentic. "Yes," she said, "I think I would." What began as one student's stand against humiliation transformed into something no one at Westlake High could have predicted. 3 weeks after the infamous juice incident, the hallways looked markedly different. Pink ribbons, the color of the punch that had stained Maya's dress, appeared on backpacks, lockers, and wrists. They became a silent signal. "I won't be a bystander. I won't look away." The first meeting of what students were calling the STAIN campaign drew over 50 attendees, cramming Mr. Reyes' guidance office beyond capacity. Maya had expected perhaps 10 people, a handful of students who had experienced bullying firsthand. Instead, she faced athletes, honor roll students, theater kids, loners, and even a few who had been perpetrators in the past. "I thought this would be like, just talking about feelings and stuff," admitted Jackson Miller, a football player whose presence shocked everyone, including himself. "But I'm here because my little sister starts high school next year, and I don't want her walking into this kind of environment." Together, they drafted a simple pledge: "I will not participate in bullying. I will not enable bullying through my silence. I will support those who have been targeted." Within days, 300 students and 27 staff members had signed it. Principal Oakes, initially hesitant to acknowledge the school had a bullying problem, found himself unable to ignore the movement growing under his roof. "We've been asked to present at the school board meeting next month," Mr. Reyes told Maya one afternoon. "They want to hear about how this started and potentially implement similar programs district-wide." The gravity of what was happening began to sink in. Maya's response to personal humiliation was reshaping policy conversations at levels she'd never imagined. Not everyone embraced the changes. Vanessa and her inner circle mockingly referred to campaign members as the Stain Gang and made pointed comments about attention-seeking behavior. But their words lacked their former power. The social landscape had shifted beneath their feet, leaving them increasingly isolated as their tactics became less tolerable to the wider student body. The most profound moment came during lunch period on a Tuesday in April. Vanessa, frustrated by her waning influence, cornered freshman Eliza Wong by the water fountains. Maya didn't witness the beginning of the confrontation, but she heard Eliza's voice, clear and steady. "No, you don't get to speak to me that way." By the time Maya rounded the corner, 3 students wearing pink ribbons had positioned themselves between Eliza and Vanessa. They weren't confrontational or aggressive. They simply stood there, a human barrier saying without words, "This stops here." "Problem?" asked Trent Maxwell, a quiet junior who had shared his own bullying story during the second campaign meeting. Vanessa looked from face to face, finding no fear, no hesitation. For perhaps the first time in her high school career, she was the one who walked away, muttering about dramatic losers, but clearly unsettled by the encounter. Later that day, Eliza sought out Maya in the library. "That's never happened before," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "Usually everyone just watches or walks away or films it for social media. No one's ever stepped in." Maya smiled. "That's the whole point. We're changing what's normal here." The campaign's impact extended beyond confrontations. Anonymous reporting systems were implemented. Peer mediation programs gained new participants. The morning announcements began featuring spotlight segments highlighting acts of kindness and inclusion. Teachers incorporated anti-bullying discussions into their curriculum, from analyzing power dynamics in Lord of the Flies to discussing cyberbullying in digital citizenship classes. Perhaps most significantly, students who had remained silent for years began sharing their experiences. The school newspaper published a series of anonymous accounts that shocked many who had believed bullying at Westlake was just normal teenage stuff. Reading these stories of students eating lunch in bathroom stalls to avoid cafeteria torment, of transferred schools and therapy sessions, of self-harm scars hidden beneath long sleeves, created a wave of collective empathy that couldn't be dismissed. When a local news station caught wind of what was happening, they sent a reporter to interview Maya. She initially declined, uncomfortable with being positioned as the face of the movement. "This isn't about me," she insisted. "It's about all of us." "That's exactly why you should do it," Mr. Reyes countered. "You keep redirecting the spotlight. That's leadership." The resulting 3-minute segment aired on the evening news, featuring not just Maya but 7 other students sharing their experiences and hopes for change. The day after it aired, Maya received emails from students at 5 other high schools asking how they could start similar campaigns. "We need a website," said Marcus during the next meeting, "and social media accounts. This is bigger than Westlake now." By the 6-week mark, What had begun as Maya's personal stand had evolved into a structured organization with committees, action plans, and measurable goals. The STAIN metaphor evolved into an acronym, Students Taking Action in Numbers. T-shirts appeared with the slogan, "Make it part of your design," a reference to Maya's original Instagram post that had now been shared thousands of times. Even some faculty who had previously turned blind eyes to bullying found themselves changed by the movement. Mrs. Hargrove, an English teacher known for dismissing teen drama as just part of growing up, approached Maya after school one day. "I want to apologize," she said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've been teaching for 22 years, and I think somewhere along the way, I normalized behavior that should never be normal. Your campaign has made me reconsider many interactions I've witnessed, or failed to witness, over the years. Not all changes were institutional or policy-based. Quieter transformations happened in individual interactions. Students began sitting with classmates they'd previously ignored. Study groups became more inclusive. Lunch tables that had once been strictly segregated by social status became more fluid." Maya observed these shifts with a mixture of pride and amazement. The movement had taken on a life of its own, growing beyond what any single person could have orchestrated. What had begun as a response to her personal humiliation had catalyzed a community-wide reckoning with patterns of behavior that had been normalized for generations. "You know what's weird?" she told Zoe as they updated the campaign's Instagram account one afternoon. "I'm actually grateful it happened, the juice incident. I mean, if Vanessa hadn't done that, none of this would exist." Zoe considered this. Maybe it would have happened differently. Someone like you doesn't stay silent forever. As prom season approached, the campaign faced its biggest challenge yet. Traditionally, prom court nominations had been popularity contests dominated by students like Vanessa and her friends. The campaign proposed changes to the selection process, suggesting criteria based on character, contributions to the school community, and embodiment of Westlake's values. Principal Oakes, who had become an unexpected ally in recent weeks, approved the changes. "It's time," he said simply. "These are the values we claim to teach. Our traditions should reflect them." When nominations opened under the new criteria, Maya found herself on the ballot alongside 11 other students known for their positive impact on Westlake's culture. The irony wasn't lost on her. 2 months ago, she had been a target of ridicule. Now she was being recognized as a school leader. "I don't need to win," she told Mr. Reyes when he congratulated her on the nomination. "The fact that these changes are happening at all, that's the real victory." He smiled. "That's probably why your name is on that list." As Maya pinned a campaign button onto her backpack, she caught sight of Vanessa watching her from across the hallway. Their eyes met briefly, and Maya was surprised to see not anger but something more complex in the other girl's expression. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if Vanessa might be capable of her own transformation. The thought gave her hope that perhaps the movement they'd created could reach even those who seemed most resistant to change. The STAIN campaign had started with a ruined dress and a decision to turn humiliation into power. Now it was reshaping an entire school culture, conversation by conversation, action by action, day by day. Maya didn't know what would happen next, whether the changes would last, whether other schools would truly adopt their model, whether next year's freshmen would inherit a kinder Westlake than she had known. But standing in that hallway, surrounded by evidence of what collective action could accomplish, she allowed herself to believe it was possible. Prom night arrived on a perfect May evening, the kind that seemed designed for teenage memory-making. The grand ballroom of the Westlake Hotel had been transformed with twinkling lights, cascading flowers, and the theme constellations, stars hanging from the ceiling, midnight blue tablecloths, and silver accents catching the light as students in formal wear filled the space with energy and anticipation. Maya had almost decided not to attend. Despite being nominated for prom queen, she felt uncomfortable with the attention. The campaign isn't about popularity contests, she had told Zoe when the nominations were announced. "I don't want to contradict our own message." "It's not a popularity contest anymore," Zoe had countered. "That's the whole point. The criteria changed because of you, because of us. This isn't about being the prettiest or the most well-liked. It's about character and impact. In the end, Maya relented, arriving with a group of friends who had become her support system over the past 2 months. Her dress, a deep sapphire blue that brought out the warm undertones in her skin, was a far cry from the stained white sundress that had sparked everything. Yet, in a subtle nod to where it all began, she wore a small pink ribbon pinned over her heart and Mrs. Patterson's denim jacket draped over her shoulders as she entered the ballroom. "Just for the entrance," she told Marcus when he raised an eyebrow at the casual jacket over formal wear. "It's symbolic." The evening unfolded like a dream sequence. Dancing, laughter, the kind of genuine joy that comes when people feel safe to be themselves. Maya noticed small changes that might have been invisible to an outsider but represented seismic shifts in Westlake's social ecosystem. Students who would never have interacted 2 months ago were sharing tables. The dance floor wasn't dominated by a single group but flowed with a democratic energy as different circles mingled and merged. Even Vanessa seemed different. She was still surrounded by her usual friends, still wearing the most expensive dress in the room, still commanding attention when she entered a space. But the sharp edges of her personality seemed softer somehow. She didn't make cutting remarks when less popular students passed by. She even nodded acknowledgement to Maya across the room. Not friendship, certainly, but a tacit recognition that something had changed between them. At precisely 10:30 p.m., Principal Oakes took the stage, tapping the microphone to gather everyone's attention. The music faded, conversations hushed, and the collective anticipation in the room rose as students realized it was time for the announcement of prom royalty. "Before we announce this year's prom king and queen," Principal Oakes began, his voice more solemn than the occasion typically warranted, "I want to say something about what these titles mean at Westlake High. For too long, they've been symbols of a hierarchy that divided us, that elevated some students while diminishing others." A murmur rippled through the crowd. This was not the standard preamble to prom court announcements. This year, thanks to the efforts of many of you in this room, we're redefining what it means to be recognized by your peers. The students you've nominated represent not the old values of popularity and social status, but the character we hope to cultivate at Westlake. He gestured to the side of the stage, where the 6 nominees for king and 6 for queen had been asked to gather. Maya stood among them, acutely aware of the spotlight and fighting the urge to disappear into the background as she had for so many years. These 12 students have shown us what it means to lead with empathy, to stand up for what's right, to create positive change in our community. Regardless of who wears the crown tonight, each of them deserves our recognition and gratitude. The principal opened an envelope with deliberate slowness, building the suspense that even this reimagined tradition demanded. This year's prom king is Jackson Miller. The crowd erupted in genuine applause as Jackson, the football player who had surprised everyone with his commitment to the anti-bullying campaign, accepted the crown with an embarrassed smile. His transformation from someone who had tacitly enabled bullying to a vocal advocate for change made him a fitting symbol of Westlake's evolution. As the applause died down, Principal Oakes reached for the second envelope. Maya felt her friend's hands squeeze her shoulders in silent support, but she had already made peace with whatever name would be called. The campaign's success didn't hinge on a crown or a title, and this year's prom queen, selected by you for her courage, her compassion, and her commitment to making Westlake a better place for everyone. Principal Oakes paused, though everyone in the room already knew what name would follow. Maya Chowdhury. The roar that followed was deafening. Students who had never spoken to Maya directly were on their feet, cheering as if their favorite sports team had just won a championship. It wasn't just applause for a popular girl winning an expected title. It was recognition of a journey that had transformed not just Maya but the entire school. As Maya made her way to the stage, she caught sight of Mrs. Patterson standing near the back of the ballroom. The school nurse had been invited as a chaperone, and she was wiping tears from her eyes as she watched Maya ascend the steps. Maya touched the denim jacket she still wore, the one Mrs. Patterson had loaned her on that pivotal day, and smiled at the symmetry of the moment. The crown felt surprisingly heavy as Principal Oakes placed it on her head. Jackson offered his arm with a genuine smile, and together they faced their classmates. Not as the most popular students, but as symbols of what Westlake was becoming. "Would you like to say a few words?" Principal Oakes asked, offering Maya the microphone. She hadn't prepared anything, assuming someone else would be standing in this spot. But as she looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some barely known to her, all watching expectantly, words came to her with surprising clarity. "2 months ago," she began, her voice steadier than she felt, "someone spilled juice on my dress." A knowing chuckle rippled through the crowd. The incident had become almost mythological in Westlake's collective memory. At the time, it felt like the worst thing that could happen. I was humiliated, angry, hurt. Maya's eyes found Vanessa in the crowd. Their gazes locked for a moment, not in challenge or triumph, but in a quiet acknowledgement of their shared history. But that moment led to something I never could have imagined. It taught me that sometimes the worst things that happen to us can become catalysts for the best things we do. It showed me that one person's decision to stand up can inspire others to do the same. She touched the crown lightly, still adjusting to its presence. "This crown isn't really mine. It belongs to everyone who signed the pledge, who wore a pink ribbon, who stepped between a bully and a target, who shared their story even when it was painful. It belongs to the teachers who supported us and the administrators who listened. It belongs to anyone who's ever felt powerless and found a way to reclaim their power." The silence in the ballroom was complete now, every person present absorbed in her words. "Most of all," Maya continued, "this crown belongs to anyone who still feels alone, who's still finding their voice, who hasn't yet experienced what it feels like to be truly seen and valued. This is for you. Your crown is waiting. Your moment will come." As she finished, the applause began again, building into something that felt less like celebration and more like affirmation. A collective promise that the changes they'd begun would continue. Later, as the night wound down and students began to drift toward after-parties or home, Maya found herself alone for a moment near the refreshment table. She had set her crown aside, uncomfortable with wearing it for too long, when Vanessa approached. For a tense moment, neither spoke. They had circled each other for years, predator and prey in a social ecosystem that had allowed such dynamics to flourish. But tonight, in the glow of twinkling lights and newfound perspective, they were just two girls in prom dresses, navigating the complicated territory of growth and change. "Congratulations," Vanessa said finally, the word clearly unfamiliar on her tongue when directed at Maya. "Thank you," Maya replied, searching the other girl's face for signs of sarcasm or hidden malice and finding none. Vanessa seemed to struggle with her next words. "I've been thinking about what you said about reclaiming power. I think—" She paused, vulnerability flashing across her features before she masked it again. "I think maybe I never had as much as I thought I did." It wasn't an apology, not exactly. But in the context of their history, it was seismic. An admission that perhaps the hierarchy Vanessa had fought so hard to maintain had trapped her as surely as it had trapped those she targeted. "There's room for you too, you know," Maya said quietly. "In whatever comes next. If you want it." Vanessa didn't respond directly, but she nodded once before walking away, leaving Maya to wonder if transformation might be contagious. If the ripples they created might eventually reach even those who seemed most resistant to change. As Maya gathered her things at the end of the night, she found herself back where it all began. Standing alone, holding a crown that represented both individual recognition and collective change. The stained white dress hanging in her closet at home had been transformed into something powerful and intentional. The school around her had begun its own transformation, and Maya herself had changed most of all. From a girl who tried to disappear to a young woman who had found her voice and used it to help others find theirs. The juice incident hadn't defined her, it had freed her. And in that freedom, she had discovered something profound. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives become doorways to our most meaningful contributions. Sometimes humiliation becomes a catalyst for healing. Sometimes they spill juice on your dress, and you end up crowned not just prom queen, but the architect of change you never knew you could be.